I'm Peter Lee, and this is Newsbud's China Watch. This week, America turns from China and turns toward war on the Korean peninsula. ISIS makes its move in Afghanistan, and the heat gets turned up on Duterte. Also, Trump trademarks. Also, the future of poultry-powered transportation. This is a good week for saying, last week I said. Example, last week I said, I didn't expect Chinese State Councilor Yang Jiechi's visit to Washington to promote U.S. DPRK negotiations to go very well. Well, it didn't. Per the Washington Post, China tried to get the U.S. to negotiate with North Korea. The U.S. declined. Yang Jiechi floated a plan for a dual freeze. U.S. and ROK stop military exercises, DPRK stops launching missiles. Pretty good idea, but not good enough for the United States. As I explained last week, peace with North Korea, especially peace mediated by China, would strike a near mortal blow to U.S. influence in the ROK and be a big step in the PRC Finlandizing South Korea. The alternative to giving China a win on the North Korean peninsula, or alternately blowing everything up on the Korean peninsula, is muddling through. In other words, the old Obama policy of strategic patience, widely acknowledged to have been a failure. Eli Ratner, who used to be National Security Advisor to Joe Biden, hit that note with his op-ed. Don't buy China's peace plan for North Korea. Nah, don't buy a peace plan. Buy crippling sanctions and unilateral concessions by North Korea. That's sure to work this time. Ratner declared, why start bargaining when you're on the cusp of dramatically strengthening your hand? Or, as Grand Moff Tarkin put it,
we've analyzed their attack, sir, and there is a danger. Should I have your ship standing by?
Evacuate? In our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chance.
Well, if by strengthening your hand you mean hoping North Korea doesn't test fire an ICBM that can strike the United States with a nuclear warhead, I guess we're having a serious foreign policy conversation. So, the U.S. has decided to play another round of chicken with North Korea instead of negotiating. Rex Tillerson, America's stealth Secretary of State, is traveling without a press corps to Japan, South Korea, and China March 15th through March 19th. I'm guessing his message is stand firm, trust us. U.S. strategy may be self-serving and unsound, but it might work. The U.S. approach is further complicated by the impeachment of South Korean President Park Geun-hye. With her gone, Moon Jae-in, a left-leaning skeptic concerning TAD and the U.S. relationship, is currently favored in the presidential polls. So, Tillerson also has to make the pitch that, don't worry, the U.S. strategy won't slide even further into the ditch when the new South Korean president is elected in 2 months. We got this, folks. Honest. The hopeful angle is that North Korea's core strategy is actually rapprochement with the United States. The U.S. has been talking to North Korea for the last decade, and perhaps the United States is actually negotiating with North Korea now while all this sound and fury goes on, despite the cancellation of semi-official negotiations following the assassination of Kim Jong-nam. Maybe North Korea can figure out a solution to this mess. In other words, maybe it's up to Kim Jong-un to have the strategic foresight and determination to figure out a way not only to advance the interests of his own country, but also save America's strategic bacon on the Korean peninsula and avert a regional war. Kim Jong-un saves Asia. That would make quite a headline in Time magazine. Don't hold your breath. In other stuff I said last week, I predicted that ISIS, faced with the loss of its main area of operations in the Middle East, would try to move into Asia. Well, on March 8th, ISIS fighters attacked a military hospital in Kabul and massacred more than 30 people. Where in Kabul, you might ask? Well, in the heart of Kabul. Where in the heart of Kabul? Down the street from the U.S. Embassy. Didn't hear too much about this brutal and brazen attack in the Western press, I'd say, because the attack supports the Russian, Chinese, and Pakistan narrative that ISIS is a significant problem in Afghanistan. And it undercuts the US and Indian argument that the Afghan Taliban is the real problem and ISIS is just a distraction. After the attack, there was a spasm of reporting along the lines of, only the Taliban could have done this, which got kind of awkward once the Afghan Taliban denied responsibility for the attack and ISIS claimed it. Backfilling was needed. NBC provided the heavy lifting for the Western position in its reporting with a headline stating, ISIS claims Kabul hospital attack, the Taliban remains main threat. A Brookings wonk assured the world that ISIS is still a minor story in Afghanistan. Well, ISIS is going to try to become the main story in Afghanistan and throughout Asia. The United States, and even Brookings, might be unable to stop that. Where thousands of al-Qaeda and ISIS jihadis end up after their bastions in Iraq and Syria crumble is now a matter of open anxiety for Russia, Turkey, and the EU, and a matter of existential danger in Yemen, Somalia, Libya, and the areas of Africa threatened by Boko Haram. And there's Asia. As I said last week, Asia is a fertile potential market for ISIS. It's got lots of Muslims, lots of weak states that already have Islamic insurgencies, and it's got a powerful narrative, one that resembles the original story that brought fighters to Afghanistan against the Soviet Union, jihad against the communist atheist Chinese regime that oppresses Uyghur Muslims. Afghanistan already has a small ISIS presence, ISIS Khorasan province. For it to grow, it has to deal with a hostile and well-entrenched Afghan Taliban. The hospital attack, I think, was a calling card, or advertisement, or declaration of war, a signature piece of over-the-top ISIS brutality to announce, hey, we're in Afghanistan. We're more hardcore than the Afghan Taliban. Everybody join ISIS. The China angle gives ISIS an important marketing point in competing against the Afghan Taliban. The PRC has engaged with the Afghan Taliban for many years, and the Afghan Taliban has shied away from attacking Chinese targets or harboring Uyghur fighters. I expect ISIS in Afghanistan will try to do both, to highlight the Taliban's un-Islamic appeasement toward China. China's best hope to nip the ISIS threat in the bud is prompt conclusion of the Afghan peace process, inclusion of the Afghan Taliban in the Kabul government, and a major military operation against ISIS Khorasan and other non-Afghan Taliban militants in coordination with the Pakistan Army. It will be interesting to see if the United States supports the peace process and aggressive anti-ISIS operations in Afghanistan, or whether it continues to push the anti-Afghan Taliban line in order to hamstring the PRC and to please India. No question what China is going to do. As Xi Jinping stated at the National People's Congress, the PRC will build a Great Wall of Iron to secure Xinjiang. It's not all bad news for the United States, though. One area in which the U.S. is playing a strong hand appears to be the Philippines. Duterte's problems continue to pile up. Now, there is discussion in the anti-Duterte press if he could get tried by the International Criminal Court for his alleged involvement in death squads while in Davao. His perennially tongue-tied foreign secretary, Yase Perfecto, was forced to resign when it was revealed he had concealed his previous American citizenship during his confirmation hearings. Duterte's defense secretary, Delfin Lorenzana, beat the anti-China drum by stating he had heard that the United States had deterred the PRC from island building on the Scarborough Shoal last year. That story is a bit complicated. Last year, as it became increasingly obvious China would lose the law of the sea arbitration on the 9-dash line, it unofficially threatened to island build Scarborough Shoal to show it wouldn't be driven from the South China Sea. The PRC would have the right under international law to build on Scarborough Shoal since it was a land feature it occupied, and the U.S. would have had virtually no legal grounds to obstruct it, especially if the construction was civilian and not military. So what did China do? It threatened to deploy the ultimate island defense on Scarborough Shoal, a civilian resort hotel with a tropical travel and holiday area. For good measure, China further suggested that the resort might be supplied with power and fresh water from a floating nuclear power station. Nobody's going to attack that baby. So, the United States semi-officially threatened to use covert ops to sabotage any island building at Scarborough Shoal before it started. Given the shaky legalities of U.S. sabotage, it's an open question of whether or not the PRC would have been deterred from island building on Scarborough Shoal by the U.S. But thankfully, we didn't get a chance to find out. The Chinese wouldn't have island-built Scarborough Shoal before the Philippine presidential election, and after the election, they didn't need to. What's important here is that the Philippine Defense Secretary is pushing the key pivot narrative that U.S. power is the only thing that stands between the Philippines and the PRC totally eating its lunch. Implication: Duterte is a China-appeasing chump. Lorenzana also pushed a fresh threat narrative concerning the Chinese maritime presence on the east side of the Philippines, asserting that Chinese survey vessels had been operating in an area called the Benham Rise. That's a no-no, since the Benham Rise is part of the Philippines' territorial sea. The Chinese can only sail through it, not hang around in it. Again, message is, while Duterte is witlessly appeasing China, China is eating the Philippines' lunch again on Benham Rise. And the United States, which apparently provided Lorenzana with the satellite imagery needed to document the presence of the Chinese vessels, is indispensable to protecting the Philippines' maritime and territorial rights in the Pacific Ocean, as well as the South China Sea. It's an interesting coincidence that Lorenzana made his statements just after a visit to the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson, which is patrolling the South China Sea at this time. The pro-U.S. forces are tightening the political net around Duterte. I wonder if he'll make it through his term. I think the Chinese see the handwriting on the wall and are planning accordingly for the possibility of a pro-U.S. Philippine government aggressively asserting its South China Sea rights. Maybe we'll get that atomic-powered tropical resort on Scarborough Shoal after all. Finally, we're in the era of never-Trump adversarial reporting. One major byproduct of adversarial reporting is, well, adversarial reporting. Like reporting on the Chinese government's decision to fast-track registration of the Trump trademark for a variety of services and businesses like hotels, escort services, and so on. This was spun as a Chinese bribe to Trump, a possible violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. As president, Trump can't accept economic benefits from foreign governments and or the sign of Trump's intention to operate a prostitution ring inside China. AP tracked down the trademark applications and went into full conspiracy mode, writing, "The monopoly right to a successful brand in a market like China can be worth huge sums." Former top ethics lawyers from the administrations of Barack Obama and George W. Bush say any special treatment from Beijing in awarding Trump intellectual property protection would violate the Constitution. And the Democrats weighed in. This president's conflicts of interest are creeping into every corner of the world. The consequence is that he has done nothing to counter Chinese currency manipulation, trade rules violations, military buildup, and other aggressive Chinese actions. Standing up for a great America means putting our nation before personal profit. I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb to say this is flapdoodle. These trademark registrations are defensive to block businesses in China from unauthorized use of the Trump name for their products. As rather famously, a Chinese escort service branded itself as Trump International High-Quality Model Escorts when Trump got the GOP nomination. As for why the Chinese fast-tracked the registrations, I think it was out of respect for the United States, so that the name of its president wouldn't be associated with shoddy services and sleazy products in China. And finally, imagine a future where chickens, dogs, and humans unite to end our reliance on fossil fuels and save the world. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to newsbud.com, where you'll find exclusive content available only to the Newsbud community. I'm Peter Lee for Newsbud's China Watch.
For just a small subscription fee, you can become a member of the Newsbud community and help keep this website running. Your subscription will provide you with full community access to exclusive content, including videos and articles from Newsbud's team of experts and analysts, as well as a members-only monthly newsletter from Newsbud's founder, Sibel Edmonds. Sign up today for full access at newsbud.com.